Hello, this is the second part of my read-through of Chapter 6, The Writings and Teachings of Baha'u'llah, of my book, The Baha'i Faith, A Short History. Of the letters to individual rulers, the letters to Nasruddin Shah and to Sultan Abdulaziz and his ministers had an immediate importance, in that between them the two rulers controlled the fate of Baha'u'llah and that of the majority of the Baha'is. The letter to the Sultan in 1863 appears to have been strongly worded and challenging, and this could certainly be said of subsequent letters to his leading ministers and a nominal address to him in the Surah Muluk. The actions of the Ottoman government in unjustly subjecting Baha'u'llah and his companions to successive exiles, without making proper inquiry, are condemned. The Sultan is counselled not to abandon the affairs of state into the hands of untrustworthy and impious ministers, and predictions are made that the Sultan will fall from the throne of tyranny and that European Turkey will be lost. Abdulaziz's later deposition in 1876 and the disastrous Ottoman defeat by the Russians in 1877-78, which included the occupation of Edirne and led to the loss of eastern Rumelia, did much to enhance Baha'u'llah's prestige in Iran, leading to at least one prominent conversion. By contrast, the letter to the Shah, delivered in 1868, is conciliatory in tone, emphasizing the loyalty and peaceableness of the Baha'is, now transformed under Baha'u'llah's guidance from the militant Babis of old, and asking that they should be given official recognition and protection. That this appeal was unsuccessful cannot have been surprising, and elsewhere in his writings Baha'u'llah condemns Nasruddin Shah as the prince of oppressors, consoling the Baha'is with the promise that Tehran would one day be blessed with a just ruler who would protect them. The letters to the Western rulers had more symbolic value, indicating the universality of Baha'u'llah's proclamation. Some sort of request for French assistance in securing justice for the Baha'is in the Ottoman Empire was apparently made. The manner of Napoleon III's rejection of this letter was deemed arrogant, and the prediction was made in a second letter, copies of which were widely circulated, that he would be deposed and France thrown into confusion. France's subsequent defeat in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870-71 again enhanced Baha'u'llah's prestige among the Iranian Baha'is. Of the other Western rulers to whom letters were sent, two were praised. Alexander II of Russia for his assistance afforded to Baha'u'llah by the Russian ambassador in Tehran at the time of his imprisonment, and Queen Victoria for the British system of parliamentary rather than absolutist government. The letter was written the year after the 1867 Reform Act, and he also thanks her for the earlier British abolition of the slave trade. The Pope was instructed to abandon his temporal domains, the Papal States, and to expend the Church's wealth in the path of God. All three were summoned to accept Baha'u'llah. Of those addressed in the Kitab al-Aqdas, but to whom no letters were actually sent, the Austro-Hungarian Emperor, Franz Joseph, was rebuked for his heedlessness in failing to inquire about Baha'u'llah when he visited Jerusalem. The rulers and presidents of the Americas were also bidden to crush injustice. The German Kaiser, Wilhelm I, was reminded of the transience of conquest and of the former glory of his defeated adversary, Napoleon III. The prophecy was also made that the banks of the Rhine would be covered with gore as a result of retribution, and that Germany would have another turn, and that Berlin would lament. However one chooses to interpret Baha'u'llah's prescience, these several predictions are well authenticated and again attracted much attention in Iran at the end of World War I. Government and world order. A component part of his letters to the rulers, but also a recurring theme in many of Baha'u'llah's letters of the Akka period, was his prescription for the remodeling of government and international order. These topics also received considerable attention in Abdul Baha's treatise on Iranian modernization, The Secret of Divine Civilization, published in 1875, which was anonymously circulated within Iranian intellectual circles at this time and came to form part of the Baha'i textual tradition. On the subject of government, Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha are adamant as to the necessity for just rule. If rulers do not protect their subjects from oppression, they will be answerable before God. It is God who has given them dominion, and this brings with it a heavy responsibility, particularly to guard the poor and defenseless. It is by their people's means that they subsist, and they must therefore ensure that the people are guarded from both political and economic injustice, the latter evidenced in the gross inequalities found in a city like Istanbul. They must rule in accordance with divine commandments. Attachment to wealth will not profit them, for they will eventually be brought to their tombs. In obvious contrast to Lockean liberalism, no justification is given for rebellion against an unjust king, however. The system of constitutional monarchy, with its combination of kingship, regarded as a sign of God, and democracy, is praised. Rulers are counselled to appoint officials on the basis of merit and to ensure that they do not become despotic. Importance is placed on having an educated electorate to lessen the likelihood of political corruption, and the vital role played by religion in the preservation of social stability is emphasized. Internationally, the rulers should seek reconciliation and amity so that they may reduce their armaments and the burden of taxation on their people. The rights of each nation should be guaranteed by the practice of collective security, whereby all nations undertake to unite in opposition to any aggressor. A world tribunal would act as arbitrator when conflicts emerged. The government should also select a single language and script to be taught throughout the world as auxiliaries to the various mother tongues. Beyond this limited peace between nations, Baha'u'llah also summoned the peoples of the world to what he termed the most great peace, the unification of religions and races, and the transformation of the world into a single homeland in which all the world's people would be the leaves of one tree. For the Baha'is, strict obedience and loyalty to established governments is enjoined, and they are forbidden to meddle in politics. They are, however, to work for the betterment of the world and to promote education, agriculture, and the arts, crafts, and sciences. Baha'u'llah's attitude to the West was nuanced. Unlike the Iran of the Babis in the 1840s, the Ottoman Empire in the 1860s was already subject to a considerable Western influence, and the ideas of modernization on Western lines were much discussed by the Ottoman reformers with whom Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha were in contact. The stance of the Baha'i Prophet and his son was to advocate the adoption of Western-style constitutionalism and elected assemblies, along with the wholesale adoption of Western technology and organizational techniques, as had occurred in Japan. By themselves, such reforms were regarded as insufficient, however. What was at least equally needed was a religious, moral, and educational reformation. Also of major significance was their critique of Western materialism. They considered that Western civilization had become unbalanced through its loss of contact with God. Holy Law. Like the Bab, Baha'u'llah composed a book of holy law, the Kitab al-Aqdas, or Most Holy Book. This was completed in about 1873, whilst he was still in the city of Akka. It was supplemented by Baha'u'llah's replies to questions raised about it, and by other of his writings. Significantly, it was written partly in response to requests by Baha'is for a book of laws. The Aqdas lays down a double obligation on all human beings: recognition of Baha'u'llah and obedience to his laws. These laws are from God and constitute both the best means for the maintenance of social and world order and a spiritual wine for those who love God. The detailed laws include the following obligations: individual daily ritual prayer, remembrance of God and recitation of scripture, an annual 19-day fast, payment of a religious tax, the right of God to the center of the faith, that Baha'is follow a trade or profession, such work counting as a form of worship, and avoid idleness, that fathers instruct their sons and daughters to read and write and ensure that they receive both a religious and academic education, service to the Baha'i cause, and the writing of a will. Baha'is are also enjoined to observe great cleanliness, delicacy, and propriety in their conduct, and to follow a moral life. In contrast to Islam, these obligations are made matters of conscience, and only in the case of the duty to ensure that a child learns to read is communal regulation involved. Prohibitions include backbiting, calumny, contention and conflict, the kissing of hands, as of a religious leader to show deference, seeking absolution for sins from another person, shaving one's head, trading in slaves, begging, sedition, gambling, the use of intoxicants, including alcohol, opium and hashish, and asceticism. Murder, theft, arson and adultery are also forbidden, and appropriate punishment specified. Various Islamic and Babi laws and practices are abrogated, including Islamic restrictions on music, described by Baha'u'llah as a ladder for the soul, and the use of gold and silver utensils. The Islamic, particularly Shi'i concept of ritual purity, and the Bionic laws regarding the destruction of non-Babi books and the prohibition of marriage with non-believers. In marked contrast to all forms of religious exclusivism, the Baha'is are bidden to associate with the followers of all religions in friendship and peace. Other ordinances of the Aqdas include marriage, recommended but not obligatory, forbidden to those under the age of 15, the age of maturity, and dependent on the consent of the bride, the groom, and their parents. The limitation of polygamy to 2 wives at most, one being regarded as preferable, and Abdul-Baha later abolishing polygamy altogether. The condemnation of divorce, which is nevertheless permitted subject to a year of waiting. A detailed system for inheritance in the case of intestacy, the form of burial, and the institution of the House of Justice as a Baha'i administrative body to be established in every city, and of the Baha'i House of Worship as a place for prayer. So, thank you very much for listening, and in particular many thanks to my patrons, Ian Palin and Tricia Williams. If you like these videos, you're very welcome to subscribe to my channel. I will try to answer any questions you may have about this video in a future one. By the way, Those who want to support the development of the channel can do so through Patreon or PayPal. I'll give details below the video of my accounts. You can also click the like button so that I can get an idea of which videos are of greatest interest to viewers. Have a good day.